Before we talk about success, before we talk about discipline, before we talk about money, productivity, or achievement, we must talk about formation. Because nothing powerful appears suddenly. Everything powerful is prepared. This is the central insight behind Increasing Personal Efficiency by Russell H. Conwell. Conwell was not interested in fast results. He was interested in enduring strength. And enduring strength always begins beneath the surface. The great illusion of efficiency. Most people misunderstand efficiency. They think efficiency means doing more, moving faster, optimizing time, squeezing output. But Conwell points to a deeper truth. Efficiency is not how fast you act. It is how well-formed the one who acts truly is. You can optimize a weak structure forever. It will still collapse. You cannot compensate for inner disorder with outer speed. Pause here. How many people do you know who are busy but not effective? How many are productive but unstable? This is not a time problem. It is a foundation problem. Power is always borrowed from the invisible. Civilizations rise and fall not because of armies, but because of character climates. Conwell makes a claim that feels radical even today. Men become what their moral environment allows them to become. Not what they want, not what they intend, what their environment trains them to be. Think of this carefully. Your habits were trained. Your emotional reactions were trained. Your tolerance for pain, boredom, effort, truth, all trained. No one is self-made in the beginning. We are environment-made before we are self-directed. Why Conwell begins with influence, not ambition. Conwell does something unusual. He does not begin his philosophy with goals. He begins with influence. Why? Because ambition without formation produces chaos. Influence is the invisible hand shaping what feels normal, what feels unacceptable, what feels possible. Before a man leads others, he was led by examples. Before he stands alone, he was shaped in company. This is not weakness, this is reality. The architecture of the inner world. Every human being lives inside an invisible structure. This structure includes emotional expectations, moral limits, internal standards, self-respect thresholds. You do not wake up each morning and choose these consciously. They operate automatically. Conwell understood this intuitively. Modern psychology confirms it explicitly. Your nervous system responds based on what it was trained to expect. Calm environments create stable minds. Chaotic environments create reactive minds. Noble environments create disciplined minds. Therefore, efficiency is not a technique, it is a byproduct of inner order. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Ask yourself quietly, what environment trained me? What behaviors were rewarded? What behaviors were punished? Was strength admired or mocked? Was discipline modeled or absent? Do not judge, just observe. Awareness precedes power. The forgotten role of moral atmosphere. Conwell argues that societies underestimate one force above all others, moral atmosphere. This is not morality as preaching, it is morality as background radiation. Children absorb it, adults adapt to it, weak minds surrender to it. Strong minds must consciously resist or cultivate it. You cannot live in a swamp and smell like a mountain. You cannot consume disorder daily and expect clarity. This is not moralism, it is mechanics. Why influence is more powerful than authority. Authority commands behavior. Influence shapes identity. Authority can be resisted. Influence is internalized. That is why Conwell emphasizes influence before instruction. You can tell a man what to do, but only influence teaches him who he is allowed to be. This applies to families, workplaces, cultures, and digital environments. Ask yourself, who is influencing me daily without my permission? Modern parallel. Digital environments. Conwell spoke of homes, literature, and social circles. Today, add algorithms, content feeds, attention economies. Your efficiency is being shaped every day by what you consume, not what you believe, what you repeatedly expose yourself to. The mind becomes what it rehearses. The silent death of inner nobility. Conwell warns subtly against something dangerous. When societies abandon inner nobility, they replace it with performance. Appearance replaces substance. Speed replaces depth. Visibility replaces worth. Efficiency declines, not rises. Because unstable people cannot sustain effort. They burn out, they fragment, they drift. Reflection exercise, guided. Ask the listener to write or think. What qualities do I admire most? Where did I learn to admire them? Do my daily inputs reinforce or weaken them? If someone lived inside my mental environment, would they grow stronger? These are not abstract questions. They determine your future capacity. Efficiency begins with inner alignment. A man is efficient when his values do not contradict his actions. His emotions do not sabotage his intentions. His environment supports his discipline. This alignment cannot be rushed. It must be constructed. That is why Conwell begins slowly. He is building a foundation that can carry weight. Transition to next segment. In the next segment of Part 1, we will go deeper into why character always precedes competence, the danger of strength without refinement, how inner dignity stabilizes effort, how most people sabotage themselves unconsciously. Because before you master the world, you must become a place worth living inside. The invisible foundations of personal power. Why character always comes before competence. One of the great modern lies is this: if you become skilled enough, everything else will follow. Conwell knew better. Skill without character creates danger. Competence without inner order creates instability. A man may learn how to speak, but without character, his words manipulate. A man may learn how to work, but without character, his effort exhausts him. A man may learn how to lead, but without character, his leadership corrodes. Character is not decoration. It is the load-bearing structure of efficiency. Strength without refinement always turns violent. There is a reason history is full of talented failures. Intelligence alone does not civilize. Energy alone does not elevate. Ambition alone does not sustain. Without refinement, strength becomes aggression. Refinement is what teaches power where to stop. It is what transforms force into direction. This is why Conwell speaks repeatedly, sometimes indirectly, about dignity. Not pride, not ego, but dignity. dignity is the governor on power. Inner dignity and the stability of effort. A dignified person does not need constant motivation. Why? Because their actions are aligned with self-respect. They do not work only for reward. They work because not working well feels beneath them. This is a crucial distinction. Discipline driven by fear collapses. Discipline driven by dignity stabilizes. Ask yourself quietly, do I act because I must or because I cannot tolerate becoming smaller? That answer explains your consistency. Reflection pause, 15 to 20-second silence. Let the listener sit with this idea. True discipline is not pressure from outside. It is refusal from inside. The inner war inside every human being. Every human being lives inside a quiet conflict. The pull downward toward comfort, ease, indulgence. The pull upward toward effort, clarity, restraint. Efficiency depends on which side feels normal. Conwell understood something subtle. You do not rise because you are heroic. You rise because your inner standards demand it. Lower standards create exhaustion. Higher standards create direction. Why most people sabotage themselves unconsciously. Self-sabotage rarely looks dramatic. It looks like procrastination, inconsistency, rationalization. I'll do it tomorrow. It's not the right time. These are not time issues. They are identity issues. A person will never consistently act above the level of identity they accept. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will never become someone who finishes. Conwell is teaching identity formation long before the term existed. Environment as a silent instructor. We often think we choose our habits, but habits are often chosen for us by environment. Noise trains distraction. Comfort trains avoidance. Chaos trains reactivity. Order trains patience. Silence trains focus. Structure trains endurance. This is not philosophy, it is conditioning. Efficiency improves automatically when the environment stops fighting the will. Practical intervention, environmental audit. Invite the listener to do this later. Take one day. Observe what you hear, what you see, what interrupts you, what drains you, what strengthens you. Then ask one brutal question. Is my environment training the person I want to become or the person I am trying to escape? Change one thing only. Efficiency grows through small structural wins. Why inner order creates time. People complain they have no time, but time is not found. Time is created by inner order. Disordered minds waste hours. Ordered minds compress effort. When you know what matters, decisions accelerate. Clarity is a time multiplier. This is why Conwell delays practical advice. Without inner order, advice becomes noise. The cost of neglecting foundations. When foundations are neglected, three things happen. 1. Progress feels heavy. 2. Motivation becomes unreliable. 3. Burnout becomes inevitable. Not because the work is too hard, but because the structure cannot carry it. You cannot outwork inner disorder. You can only exhaust yourself against it. Reflection pause. Deep one. 30 seconds. Encourage silence. Let the listener ask, where am I pushing without structure? Where am I demanding results without alignment? What foundation am I pretending doesn't matter? This is not weakness. This is intelligence. The beginning of true personal power. Personal power does not announce itself, it stabilizes. A powerful person is not frantic, not reactive, not scattered. They move with weight. Conwell's vision of efficiency is not speed, it is gravitas, the ability to endure. The invisible foundations of personal power. Refinement, the missing link between effort and excellence. Most people believe effort alone creates success. Conwell quietly disagrees. Effort without refinement produces exhaustion. Effort with refinement produces elegance. Refinement is not luxury, it is precision of character. It is the difference between working hard and working clean. A refined mind wastes less energy fighting itself. Why crudeness drains power? Crudeness is not just behavior, it is inner friction. A crude mind overreacts, overcompensates, overexplains, overconsumes. All of this wastes energy. Refinement simplifies reactions. This is why truly powerful people often appear calm. They are not suppressing energy, they are not leaking it. Restraint is not weakness, it is storage. Modern culture celebrates expression. Conwell valued restraint. Why? Because restrained energy becomes stored energy. A person who reacts to everything controls nothing. A person who chooses when to act controls outcomes. Restraint is delayed force, and delayed force multiplies impact. Reflection pause. Ask the listener, where do I leak energy emotionally? Where do I speak when silence would preserve power? The paradox of freedom and discipline. Freedom without discipline feels exciting, briefly. Then it collapses into chaos. Discipline without freedom feels oppressive, briefly. Then it evolves into mastery. True freedom is earned through structure. This is why Conwell links refinement to liberty. A refined person is not constrained, they are self-governed. Self-respect as an energy multiplier. Self-respect is not pride, it is internal coherence. When your actions match your standards, energy flows. When they don't, energy leaks into guilt, doubt, and resistance. People underestimate how exhausting self-betrayal is. A person who respects themselves needs less motivation. They simply refuse to violate their own standards. Inner silence and the strength of will. Conwell lived in a noisy era. Ours is louder. Noise weakens will. Not just sound, mental noise. Constant stimulation fragments intention. Silence consolidates force. That is why strong minds seek solitude, not to escape the world, but to reclaim direction. Guided practice. Silence as training. Invite the listener. Once a day, sit without input. No phone, no music, no distraction. Let discomfort arise. That discomfort is weakness leaving the system. Will grows in silence. Why elegance is a form of efficiency. Elegance is often misunderstood as aesthetic. Conwell understood elegance as economy of force. The elegant solution uses less effort for greater impact. The elegant person speaks less, moves deliberately, chooses carefully. Efficiency rises when unnecessary motion disappears. The inner hierarchy of values. A powerful person knows what comes first. Confused people react to whatever screams loudest. Refined people respond to what matters most. Hierarchy creates peace. When everything matters equally, nothing is clear. Efficiency requires ranking. Reflection pause. Hierarchy check. 20 seconds. Ask quietly, what do I treat as urgent that is actually trivial? What do I neglect that is actually foundational? Section 27. Why weak foundations produce loud personalities. Noise often compensates for instability. Loudness often masks insecurity. Conwell hints at this without naming it. True strength does not need performance. It radiates steadiness. The quieter the foundation, the stronger the structure. The psychological cost of inner chaos. Inner chaos taxes the nervous system. It creates fatigue without work, stress without threat, anxiety without cause. Order calms the system. Calm unlocks endurance. This is not self-help, it is neurobiology. Becoming a place worth living inside. Conwell's deepest message is subtle. Before you try to build a successful life, become a person your own mind enjoys inhabiting. Efficiency is living without inner resistance. Transition to final segment of Part 1. In the final segment, we will bring everything together. Inner order, outer effectiveness. Why dignity precedes productivity. How to consciously rebuild foundations. The first practical law of personal efficiency. Long pause. Because true power does not rush, it roots. The invisible foundations of personal power. From inner order to outer effectiveness. Everything we discussed until now leads here. Outer effectiveness is a symptom. Inner order is the cause. You do not become effective by forcing results. You become effective by removing inner resistance. When values are clear, action accelerates. When standards are firm, decisions simplify. When dignity is intact, effort sustains itself. This is the architecture of power. Why dignity must come before productivity. Modern culture worships productivity. Conwell warned, quietly but firmly, against this inversion. Productivity without dignity produces burnout, manipulation, and hollow success. Dignity anchors effort to meaning. A dignified person will work hard, not because they are desperate, but because excellence is non-negotiable. Ask yourself, do I work to prove my worth, or because my worth demands quality? That distinction changes everything. Rebuilding foundations consciously. Most people inherit their foundations. Very few rebuild them. But personal power begins the moment you say, what shaped me is not necessarily what must define me. Rebuilding foundations is not dramatic, it is precise. It means choosing standards intentionally, designing environments deliberately, removing influences that weaken resolve, protecting silence. This is slow work, but it creates permanent strength. Practical framework, the first law of personal efficiency. Here is the first law distilled from Conwell's philosophy. Never demand from yourself what your foundations cannot support. If consistency fails, fix structure. If motivation fades, fix standards. If effort exhausts, fix alignment. Do not shame yourself. Engineer yourself. Efficiency as integrity. The most efficient person is not the fastest. It is the one who wastes the least energy fighting themselves. Integrity means no inner contradiction, no secret negotiations, no constant self-justification. Integrity creates flow. Flow multiplies effort. Reflection pause, deep integration, 30 to 40 seconds. Invite the listener. Sit quietly. Ask, where is my inner structure weak? What standard am I avoiding? What influence must be removed? What silence must be restored? Do not rush the answers. Power responds to honesty. why this foundation changes everything that follows. Everything that comes next in this series depends on this foundation: music, speech, persuasion, work, self-reliance. Without inner border, these become tools of noise. With inner order, they become instruments of mastery. This is why Russell H. Conwell began here in Increasing Personal Efficiency. He was not teaching success, he was teaching stability. Closing passage: seal the foundation. Before you try to change your life, become someone capable of holding change. Before you chase results, build a structure worthy of them. Before you seek power, become ordered enough to carry it. Efficiency is not speed, it is readiness.
Womanhood and influence. The silent architecture of character. Opening atmosphere. The power that rarely speaks. Some forces in life command attention. Others command destiny. They do not issue orders. They do not seek authority. They do not compete for visibility. They shape. Russell Conwell begins this section with an idea many readers miss. The strongest influences in human life are often the least aggressive. Influence does not push. It permits. It creates a psychological atmosphere in which certain behaviors feel natural and others impossible. Why Conwell spoke of womanhood at all? At first glance, Conwell's focus on womanhood feels dated, but if you read carefully, you realize something deeper. He is not describing gender, he is describing formative presence. Womanhood, in his framework, represents moral tone, emotional climate, refinement, restraint, continuity. It is not about power over others, it is about power within the environment. Influence versus control. Control forces behavior. Influence shapes preference. Control demands compliance. Influence creates consent. This is why influence lasts longer. A child controlled behaves temporarily. A child influenced becomes someone permanently. Conwell understood this intuitively long before psychology named it. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Think of someone who influenced you deeply. They probably did not lecture you. They modeled something. The psychology of emotional atmosphere. Every space has an emotional temperature. Homes, workplaces, communities. People do not respond to rules first. They respond to tone. Calm environments create self-regulation. Chaotic environments create hypervigilance. Respectful environments create dignity. Womanhood, in Conwell's time, often held responsibility for that tone, not because of biology, but because of proximity and continuity. Formation happens before conscious choice. Most of who we become is shaped before we realize shaping is happening. Values are absorbed long before they are articulated. Standards are felt long before they are explained. This is the silent work of influence. By the time reason awakens, the structure is already standing. Why moral atmosphere is stronger than instruction. You can teach rules. You cannot teach presence. Presence is absorbed. Conwell believed moral atmosphere educates more effectively than moral lectures. People rise or fall to the level of what surrounds them, not what instructs them. Modern parallel, beyond gender. Today, womanhood as a category has shifted, but the principle remains. Influence now appears as media tone, cultural narratives, emotional modeling online, and normalization of behavior. The question is no longer who raises the child, but what raises the nervous system. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. What emotional tone surrounds me daily? Does it elevate or erode? What behaviors does it make feel normal? Why influence shapes ambition itself? Ambition is not born in isolation. It emerges from what feels permitted. If excellence feels welcomed, people strive. If excellence feels mocked, people retreat. Influence determines how high effort is allowed to go, how much dignity is tolerated, how much discipline feels acceptable. The feminine principle as civilizing force. Conwell viewed the feminine principle as civilizing, not dominating. Civilization requires patience, continuity, restraint, and long-term thinking. These qualities stabilize power. Without them, strength becomes reckless. Why societies decline when refinement is lost. History shows a pattern. When refinement disappears, aggression rises, vulgarity spreads, effort loses meaning, power becomes performative. Influence collapses first, then structure, then endurance. Reflection pause. Cultural mirror. Ask the listener, what does my culture reward? Noise or depth, speed or stability, exposure or excellence? Influence is responsibility, not privilege. Conwell treated influence as a moral responsibility. If you shape atmosphere, you shape outcomes. This applies to parents, leaders, creators, educators. If people become worse around you, influence failed. If they become stronger, influence succeeded. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we go deeper into the unseen relationship between refinement and power, why respect must be modeled, not demanded, how influence shapes self-respect, and the danger of losing formative anchors. Because the most powerful force in civilization is the one no one thinks to guard.
Womanhood and influence. The silent architecture of character. Refinement as the guardian of power. Power by itself is neutral. It becomes destructive or constructive based on the refinement surrounding it. Conwell understood something many civilizations learned too late. Strength without refinement does not protect society. It destabilizes it. Refinement teaches power, when to act, when to stop, when to yield. Without refinement, power only knows how to expand. Why respect cannot be taught, only witnessed. You cannot instruct someone into self-respect. You can only demonstrate it. Children do not learn dignity from speeches. They learn it from how dignity is treated around them. If dignity is mocked, they abandon it. If dignity is honored, they internalize it. Influence works at the level of imitation, not obedience. Reflection pause. Ask the listener, who modeled respect for me? Who modeled contempt? Which one shaped me more? The invisible education of restraint. Restraint is rarely praised. It does not look impressive. Yet restraint is the cornerstone of civilization. A restrained environment teaches patience, impulse control, foresight. These traits create adults capable of long-term effort. When restraint disappears, immediacy takes over, and immediacy destroys endurance. Emotional safety as a precondition for growth. Conwell hints at a subtle psychological truth. People grow best where they feel emotionally safe. Safety does not mean comfort. It means predictability, respect, and stability. In unsafe emotional climates, energy is spent on defense, attention narrows, ambition shrinks. Influence either expands or contracts the future. Modern insight, nervous system training. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Environments train nervous systems. A regulated nervous system can delay gratification. A dysregulated one seeks relief immediately. Influence is nervous system training in disguise. Why influence determines moral limits. Every culture has invisible boundaries, things that are unthinkable, unacceptable, unquestioned. These limits are rarely written, they are felt. Influence installs these limits quietly. When moral limits dissolve, chaos does not arrive suddenly. It arrives gradually, disguised as freedom. Reflection pause. Boundary awareness. Invite the listener. What behaviors feel normal around me that would have shocked earlier generations? Is that progress or erosion? The feminine principle and continuity. Conwell emphasized continuity, not excitement, not conquest, continuity. Civilizations survive because someone protects daily rhythms, moral tone, long-term values. Influence preserves what ambition would otherwise discard. When influence is replaced by performance. One of the great dangers of modern culture, influence is replaced by performance. Visibility replaces presence. Expression replaces restraint. Attention replaces impact. But performance cannot shape character. Only consistent presence can. Why men rise or fall with the tone around them. Conwell was blunt about this. Men do not fail alone. They fail within climates that permit failure. Likewise, they rise where excellence feels supported. Influence does not create talent. It creates permission. Permission to be disciplined. Permission to be honorable. Permission to strive. Reflection pause. Personal climate check. Ask quietly. What kind of man or woman does my environment permit me to become? Influence as moral stewardship. To influence is to steward futures. This is not romantic, it is weighty. If you shape atmosphere, you shape destiny. Parents, leaders, creators, partners, all participate in this whether they intend to or not. Neglect is also influence. The cost of losing formative anchors. When societies lose formative anchors, identity becomes unstable. Standards become negotiable. Effort loses direction. People drift, not because they are weak, but because no stabilizing influence remains. Reclaiming influence consciously. Influence can be reclaimed. It begins with awareness, then intention, then consistency. You do not need authority to influence. You need integrity and presence. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore how influence shapes self-image, why identity is socially transmitted, the relationship between admiration and becoming, how to rebuild positive influence today. Because people rarely become what they are told to be.
They become what they are surrounded by.
Womanhood and influence. The silent architecture of character. Identity is never self-created. One of the most persistent myths of modern culture is this: you can become whoever you decide to be. That sounds empowering, but it is incomplete. Identity is not created in isolation. It is mirrored into existence. We discover who we are by observing what is admired, what is tolerated, what is dismissed, what is rewarded. Influence provides the mirror. Without mirrors, identity fragments. Admiration is the blueprint of becoming. People rarely become what they desire. They become what they admire. Admiration directs attention. Attention shapes imitation. Imitation shapes character. This is why influence is dangerous when misplaced. If shallow traits are admired, depth disappears. If aggression is admired, restraint erodes. If ease is admired, effort collapses. Reflection pause. Ask the listener quietly, who do I admire without questioning? What am I slowly becoming because of that admiration? The feminine role in modeling worth. Conwell understood a subtle dynamic. Worth is learned relationally, especially early in life. How worth is modeled teaches what kind of love is normal, what kind of respect is expected, what kind of effort is meaningful. Influence teaches people not only how to act, but what they are worth becoming. When worth is conditional, identity weakens. If approval is conditional on performance, on obedience, on visibility, then identity becomes fragile. Fragile identity seeks constant validation. Strong influence offers stable regard. Not indulgence, not flattery, but consistent recognition of dignity. This stability becomes the backbone of confidence. Influence and the formation of inner voice. Your inner voice did not originate inside you. It was borrowed from caregivers, from culture, from repeated emotional interactions. Over time, that borrowed voice becomes internal authority. Influence literally becomes self-talk. This is why careless influence echoes for decades. Reflection pause. Inner voice audit. Invite the listener. Whose voice do I hear when I doubt myself? Is it encouraging? Is it harsh? Is it dismissive? Where did it come from? Why presence matters more than instruction. Instruction explains. Presence embodies. Children forget lectures. They remember emotional tone. Presence communicates safety, expectation, boundaries, belief. Influence operates below conscious memory. That is why it lasts. The transmission of self-respect. Self-respect cannot be demanded. It must be received before it can be practiced. People who were never respected struggle to respect themselves, not because they are broken, but because no internal model exists. Influence installs that model silently. When influence fails, compensation appears. When formative influence is weak, performance increases, noise increases, control increases. Compensation replaces formation, but compensation exhausts. Formation stabilizes. Modern parallel.
digital influence, and identity drift. Today, influence no longer requires proximity. It streams. Algorithms now shape admiration, aspiration, identity. Without conscious filtering, identity becomes reactive. People chase trends instead of forming character. Reflection pause. Digital mirror check. Ask quietly, what kind of person does my digital environment invite me to become? Rebuilding identity through conscious influence. Identity can be rebuilt, but not by affirmation alone. It requires new models, new admiration, new standards, new emotional climates. You cannot think your way into a new identity. You must live near it. Influence as the soil of destiny. Conwell's deeper message is this: effort grows where influence permits it. Character matures where dignity is modeled. Destiny is planted long before it is chosen. Influence is the soil. Transition to final segment of Part 2. In the final segment, we will integrate everything: influence and moral responsibility, why shaping atmosphere is a sacred task, how to become a stabilizing influence yourself, the ethical weight of presence. Because the most powerful legacy is not what you achieve, it is what you make possible in others.
Womanhood and influence. The silent architecture of character. Influence is a moral act, whether you admit it or not. Influence does not require intention. It happens by presence alone. Every environment teaches. Every tone permits. Every reaction models. To exist near others is to shape them. This is not a privilege. It is a responsibility. Why neutral influence does not exist. There is no such thing as neutral atmosphere. Silence can dignify. Silence can also abandon. Absence teaches as much as action. If discipline is missing, disorder instructs. If respect is absent, contempt educates. Influence is always active. The only question is, in which direction? Reflection pause. Responsibility check. Ask the listener, who becomes slightly better or worse after spending time near me? Do not defend, just notice. The ethical weight of presence. Conwell treats influence as stewardship. Stewardship means care without control, guidance without domination, strength without force. True influence never humiliates, it elevates quietly. Becoming a stabilizing influence. To stabilize others, you must be stable yourself. Stability is built through emotional regulation, consistent standards, restraint under pressure, dignity in small actions. People relax into growth around stable presence. Chaos demands defense. Refinement as an act of care. Refinement is often misunderstood as elitism. Conwell saw it as care for the future. Refinement preserves meaning, continuity, depth. It slows decline. It protects effort from erosion. Why influence outlasts achievement. Achievements fade, influence reproduces. People forget what you accomplished. They remember how safe they felt, how seen they were, how standards rose around you. Influence multiplies beyond your lifespan. Reflection pause. Legacy without fame. Invite the listener. If nothing you did were remembered, but how you made people feel endured, would that be enough? Influence in a disordered age. We live in an age of acceleration. Speed rewards visibility. Algorithms reward intensity. Noise rewards extremes. Influence now requires deliberate resistance. To be calm is countercultural. To be refined is rebellious. To be stable is radical. Reclaiming the feminine principle today. This is not about roles, it is about qualities. Wherever these exist, civilization strengthens. Patience, moral continuity, emotional intelligence, restraint. When they vanish, power becomes reckless. Influence civilizes strength or abandons it. Your sphere of influence is smaller than you think and larger than you realize. You may not shape nations, but you shape rooms, conversations, moments. And moments accumulate. Influence works locally. That is why it endures. Practical integration, becoming intentional influence. Invite the listener to practice. For 1 week, lower your emotional volume, increase your consistency, protect dignity in conversation, protect restraint under stress. Notice what changes around you. Influence responds to coherence. Why this part matters for everything that follows. Everything that comes next, music, speech, persuasion, work, self-reliance, depends on how power is shaped before it is used. That is why Russell H. Conwell devoted such care to this theme in Increasing Personal Efficiency. He was not romanticizing influence, he was warning us to guard it. Closing passage, seal the insight. Before you try to change minds, shape atmosphere. Before you demand excellence, model dignity. Before you seek power, become civilizing. Influence is not loud, it is decisive.
Harmony, music, and the nervous system. How sound shapes the inner world. Before language, before logic, before conscious memory, there is rhythm. The human nervous system responds to sound before it understands meaning. This is where Russell H. Conwell takes an unexpected turn in increasing personal efficiency. He does not treat music as entertainment. He treats it as invisible education. Why music bypasses the mind. Most influences must pass through thought. Music does not. It enters directly into emotion, mood, tension, release. You can resist ideas. You cannot easily resist rhythm. This is why music shapes people long before they form opinions. Harmony as nervous system training. The nervous system learns through repetition. Harmony trains regulation. Discord trains agitation. Orderly sound patterns teach the body timing, patience, anticipation, restraint. Disordered sound trains impulsivity, overstimulation, restlessness. Conwell understood this intuitively. Modern neuroscience confirms it explicitly. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Notice your breathing right now. Has it changed since this section began? That is influence without instruction. Music as emotional architecture. Music builds emotional rooms inside us. Some rooms calm, some rooms energize, some rooms disturb. People revisit these rooms unconsciously. Over time, they begin to live there. This is why careless exposure matters. You do not just hear music, you inhabit it. Why harmony precedes discipline. A dysregulated nervous system struggles with discipline, not because of laziness, because chaos consumes energy. Harmony stabilizes internal rhythm. Stable rhythm supports sustained focus, delayed gratification, emotional resilience. Efficiency improves when the nervous system stops fighting itself. The moral dimension of sound. Conwell believed sound had moral consequences, not because notes are good or evil, but because they train states. States shape behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Music is not neutral. It prepares the nervous system for certain kinds of action. Reflection pause. Listening awareness. Ask quietly, what kind of emotional state does my daily music prepare me for? Calm, aggression, melancholy, restlessness. Rhythm and the sense of time. Rhythm teaches timing. People who live in rhythm pace effort better, endure longer, waste less energy. Disrupted rhythm creates urgency without purpose. Harmony restores temporal order. This is why music has always accompanied work, ritual, and healing. Why noise weakens the will. Noise fragments attention. Not just loud noise, chaotic input. A fragmented mind cannot sustain intention. Conwell warned against constant stimulation long before the digital age made it unavoidable. Silence and harmony rebuild will. Modern parallel. The age of overstimulation. Today's nervous systems are under constant assault. Music plays everywhere. Stores, phones, gyms, content feeds. Much of it is not harmonic. It is stimulating. Stimulation is not nourishment. It excites without stabilizing. Reflection pause. Sensory diet check. Ask, is my sound environment feeding my nervous system or exhausting it? Harmony as inner order made audible. Harmony externalizes order. The nervous system learns order by feeling it. This is why music therapy works even when words fail. Order experienced becomes order embodied. Why efficient people guard their sound environment. Highly effective people are selective listeners, not because they are elitist, because they understand energy economics. They protect rhythm, silence, and tonal balance. Efficiency is preservation of usable energy. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will go deeper into music and emotional memory, why certain sounds anchor identity, how harmony heals fragmentation, and the danger of constant sonic chaos.
because what you listen to daily is quietly deciding how strong you can become.
Harmony, music, and the nervous system. How sound shapes the inner world. Why music anchors memory more than words. Words pass through the mind. Sound passes through the body. That is why music attaches itself to memory with unusual strength. A single melody can resurrect an entire season of life, a forgotten emotional state, a version of yourself you thought was gone. The nervous system remembers sound long after language fades. Emotional memory lives in rhythm. Trauma is often stored without words. So is comfort. The nervous system encodes pace, tone, intensity, repetition. Music mirrors these patterns. This is why certain sounds feel safe, threatening, nostalgic, energizing. Before you think, your body remembers. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Notice which music makes your shoulders drop, which tightens them. Your body knows before you do. How sound shapes identity over time. Identity is not only belief, it is felt continuity. Repeated emotional states become familiar. Familiar states become me. Music rehearses emotional states. Over time, people begin to identify with melancholy, aggression, restlessness, calm. Not philosophically, physiologically. When sound reinforces fragmentation. Fragmented sound produces fragmented attention. Fragmented attention produces fragmented identity. Constant shifts in rhythm train impatience, impulsivity, shallow focus. The nervous system adapts by staying alert. Alertness is not presence, it is defense. Harmony as psychological integration. Harmony integrates. It brings parts into relationship. When sound resolves tension, the nervous system learns resolution. This teaches emotional closure, patience through discomfort, trust in process. These are life skills learned somatically. Reflection pause. Resolution awareness. Ask quietly, do I allow tension to resolve, or do I escape it immediately? What does my music train me to do? Why certain music feels home. People often say, this music feels like home. That is not poetic, it is neurological. Home is where the nervous system relaxes. Music that feels like home matches your internal rhythm. The danger? If your internal rhythm was shaped by chaos, chaos can feel familiar. Reconditioning the nervous system through sound. The nervous system is plastic. It can be retrained, but not through force, through exposure. Repeated exposure to harmonious sound lowers baseline tension, increases emotional range, improves tolerance for silence. This creates space for discipline to grow. Why silence is part of music. Silence is not absence, it is structure. Without silence, rhythm collapses, meaning blurs, impact weakens. The nervous system learns restraint through silence. This is why silence feels uncomfortable at first. It exposes fragmentation. Reflection pause. Silence tolerance. Invite the listener. When sound stops,
Do I feel peace or anxiety? That answer reveals nervous system health. Music, mood, and moral readiness. Sound prepares mood. Mood prepares action. This is why marches precede war, hymns precede worship, chants precede unity. Music aligns groups by aligning nervous systems. Efficiency depends on what you are being prepared for. The hidden cost of constant sonic stimulation. Constant stimulation prevents integration. The nervous system never completes cycles. This creates chronic restlessness, shallow motivation, emotional fatigue. People then seek stronger stimulation. The cycle tightens. Harmony interrupts this loop. Choosing sound as self-formation. Sound is not background, it is training. Every choice of sound is a choice of state. Every repeated state becomes structure. Efficiency improves when states stabilize. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore music as emotional regulation, why harmony increases endurance, how sound affects moral perception, the difference between stimulation and nourishment. Because before you change your habits, you must change the state from which habits emerge.
Harmony, music, and the nervous system. How sound shapes the inner world. Music as emotional regulation, not escape. Most people use music to escape how they feel. Very few use it to regulate how they feel. There is a difference. Escape numbs. Regulation integrates. Music that only distracts prevents emotional processing. Music that harmonizes allows emotions to move and settle. Efficiency requires regulated emotion, not suppressed emotion. Why endurance depends on emotional rhythm. Endurance is not just physical, it is emotional pacing. People burn out not because effort is too high, but because emotional tension never resolves. Harmony teaches the nervous system, rise, sustain, release. This cycle is essential for long-term effort. Without it, collapse is inevitable. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. When I work, do I allow moments of resolution, or do I push without rhythm? Sound and the capacity to tolerate discomfort. Discomfort is not the enemy of growth. Avoidance is. Harmony increases tolerance for tension. Why? Because harmonic progression teaches waiting, anticipation, and trust in unfolding. The nervous system learns this tension will resolve. That belief changes everything. When stimulation replaces strength. Stimulation creates energy spikes. Strength creates energy reserves. Music that overstimulates excites quickly, exhausts rapidly. Music that harmonizes builds slowly, sustains longer. Efficient people choose nourishment over excitement. Sound and moral readiness. Moral choices are state-dependent. A calm nervous system perceives nuance, an agitated one seeks extremes. Harmony supports patience, empathy, and restraint. Noise fuels impulsivity, polarization, and aggression. Music quietly prepares the ground on which moral decisions grow. Reflection pause. State before choice. Ask quietly. What state am I usually in before I make important decisions? Why certain music encourages discipline.
Discipline requires delayed gratification, sustained focus, and emotional containment. These are trained, not willed. Orderly sound patterns rehearse patience, timing, and restraint. Over time, the body learns discipline before the mind demands it. The relationship between harmony and self-trust. A regulated nervous system trusts itself. An overstimulated one doubts. Self-trust reduces hesitation. Hesitation drains energy. Harmony rebuilds internal reliability. You begin to trust your pacing, your endurance, your reactions. Efficiency follows trust. When music becomes inner infrastructure. Eventually, sound stops being something you hear. It becomes something you are. Internal rhythm stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior supports long-term goals. This is how music becomes infrastructure. Reflection pause. Internal rhythm check. Invite the listener. Is my inner rhythm frantic or measured? Reactive or responsive? Sound as preparation for silence. The goal of harmony is not constant music. It is peaceful silence. When harmony has done its work, silence no longer feels empty. It feels supportive. This is a sign of nervous system health. Why efficient minds value quiet. Quiet is not absence. It is readiness. A quiet nervous system perceives clearly, responds proportionally, and endures pressure. Harmony prepares the system for quiet. Quiet prepares the mind for power. Transition to final segment of Part 3. In the final segment, we will integrate harmony as daily practice, designing a sound environment for strength, music as self-discipline training, and how to listen intentionally. Because what surrounds your nervous system is quietly deciding how far you can go without breaking.
Harmony as a daily practice, not a playlist. Harmony is not a genre. It is a relationship with sound. It is how sound enters your day, how long it stays, and what state it leaves behind. A single harmonious moment can stabilize hours of effort. This is why sound should be chosen intentionally, not habitually. Designing a sound environment for strength. Efficient people design their environments. Sound is part of that design. Ask 3 questions. Does this sound calm or agitate my nervous system? Does it help me sustain effort or burn out quickly? Does it prepare me for silence or make me avoid it? Sound that supports strength has structure, has space, and allows resolution. Reflection pause. Environmental design. Invite the listener. If my nervous system could choose, what would it remove from my sound environment? Music as self-discipline training. Discipline is often misunderstood as force, but force fades. Training lasts. Harmony trains patience through progression, attention through repetition, restraint through silence. You learn to stay present without rushing resolution. That skill transfers directly to work, study, and life. The difference between listening and consuming sound. Consuming sound is passive. Listening is active. Passive consumption floods the system. Active listening organizes it. Listening involves attention, stillness, and receptivity. Efficiency increases when attention deepens. When harmony becomes inner order. Over time, external harmony creates internal order. You begin to notice slower reactions, clearer thinking, steadier emotions. This is not mood, it is structural change. The nervous system learns reliability. Reflection pause. Change detection. Ask quietly, do I feel more steady now than at the beginning of this part?
sound, silence, and the return of will. Willpower is not endless, but a regulated nervous system needs less of it. Harmony restores will by reducing internal conflict. Silence then becomes fertile. From silence, intention emerges cleanly. The ethical use of sound. Sound can manipulate. It can also heal. Conwell believed sound carried responsibility, not because it persuades intellectually, but because it prepares emotionally. Using sound carelessly is like handling tools without awareness. Why this part matters for personal efficiency. Efficiency depends on emotional regulation, sustained focus, and tolerance for tension. Sound trains all three, daily, quietly, relentlessly. That is why Russell H. Conwell devoted attention to music in increasing personal efficiency. He understood that before discipline becomes a habit, the nervous system must feel safe enough to endure. Practical integration. Intentional listening protocol. Invite the listener to try this for 1 week. 1 period daily with intentional listening, no multitasking. End with 2 minutes of silence. Notice changes in focus, patience, and emotional stability. Efficiency responds to regulation. Closing passage. Seal the insight. You do not listen to sound. Sound listens to you. It shapes your rhythm, your tolerance, your readiness. Choose harmony carefully, because what your nervous system rehearses daily becomes the limit of what you can sustain.
Oratory, presence, and the science of speaking. How the voice becomes authority. Opening atmosphere. Before words, there is presence. Before anyone listens to what you say, they feel how you stand. Before meaning reaches the mind, your presence reaches the nervous system. This is where Russell H. Conwell makes a crucial distinction in increasing personal efficiency. Speaking is not the transfer of information, it is the transmission of state. Why most people speak and are not heard. People believe they're unheard because their ideas are weak, their language is simple, their vocabulary is limited. Conwell knew better. Most people are not heard because their presence is fragmented. The nervous system of the listener senses tension, insecurity, urgency, self-doubt before the sentence ends. Words cannot override state. Presence is not confidence, it is coherence. Confidence can be performed, presence cannot. Presence is coherence between breath, posture, intention, and emotion. When these align, authority appears naturally. You do not sound convincing, you are convincing. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. Recall someone who spoke very little, yet commanded the room. What did you feel before they spoke? The nervous system listens before the mind. Human beings evolved to read tone faster than content. That skill never left. Listeners unconsciously ask, is this person regulated? Are they grounded? Are they stable? If the answer is no, the mind resists, even if the words are correct. This is biology, not bias. Why volume is often a compensation. Raising volume often compensates for lack of presence. Speed compensates for insecurity. Complexity compensates for uncertainty. Over-explanation compensates for doubt. Conwell warned against this. Authority does not hurry. It allows silence. The physics of the voice. The voice is physical. It carries breath quality, muscular tension, emotional charge. A regulated nervous system produces a steady voice. One dysregulated produces sharpness, tremor, rush. Training speech begins with training the body. Reflection pause.
Voice awareness. Ask quietly, when I speak under pressure, does my voice tighten or settle? Why oratory is ethical power. Speech can organize or destabilize. It can calm crowds, inflame crowds, clarify, confuse. Conwell treated oratory as moral responsibility, not because of content alone, but because of emotional impact. To speak without regulation is to gamble with other people's nervous systems. Presence creates permission to listen. People listen when they feel safe. Safety is communicated through steadiness, pacing, restraint, clarity. Presence says, you can relax, I am not chaotic. That invitation opens attention. The difference between persuasion and pressure. Pressure forces agreement. Presence allows understanding. Persuasion without presence still feels manipulative. Presence without persuasion still influences. Why? Because calm reorganizes others. Reflection pause, influence check. Ask the listener, when I speak, do people become more regulated or more tense? Why Conwell valued oratory so highly? In Conwell's era, speech shaped nations, but his insight transcends time. Speech shapes inner order. People often leave conversations clearer, calmer, more focused, or the opposite. Speech leaves residue. Efficient speakers leave order behind them. Transition to segment 2. In the next segment, we will explore how breath and posture create authority, why silence amplifies meaning, the hidden link between humility and power, and training presence without performance. Because before you master language, you must become steady enough to carry it. Oratory, presence, and the science of speaking. How the voice becomes authority. Authority begins in the body, not the mouth. Before a single word is spoken, the body has already spoken. Posture communicates readiness or collapse, steadiness or anxiety, self-respect or self-erasure. A collapsed body cannot carry authority, not because it is weak, but because it signals uncertainty. Presence begins with alignment. Breath is the hidden source of power. Breath is the first instrument of speech. Shallow breath produces rushed words, tight tone, nervous pacing. Deep, unforced breath produces steadiness, resonance, calm authority. You cannot fake a grounded voice with a panicked breath. Reflection pause, breath awareness. Invite the listener. Right now, where is your breath? High in the chest or low and steady? Your voice follows it. Why silence amplifies meaning. Silence is not emptiness, it is pressure. When silence appears, attention sharpens, anticipation builds, meaning condenses. People who fear silence fill it with noise. People who trust presence use silence as punctuation. Silence says, I am not afraid of space. Nervous system reads pace as truth. Pace reveals inner state. Rushed speech signals urgency, insecurity, fear of interruption. Measured speech signals confidence, clarity, control. Listeners trust pace more than content. Slow does not mean dull. Slow means intentional. Humility is the source of vocal strength. True authority does not need dominance. It rests on humility. Humility allows listening, pause, adjustment. A human speaker does not fight the room. They attune to it. This attunement builds trust. Reflection pause. Attunement check. Ask quietly. When I speak, am I trying to win or to connect? Why over-explaining weakens speech? Over-explaining signals doubt. It tells the listener, I am not sure you believe me. Authority assumes comprehension. It does not beg for it. Clarity is brief. Confidence is concise. The role of intention in speech. Speech carries intention whether acknowledged or not. If the intention is approval-seeking, tension appears. If control, resistance appears. If service, openness appears. Listeners feel intention before they understand words. Align intention and language follows. Training presence without performance. Presence is not acting, it is removal. Removing excess tension, unnecessary speed, emotional noise. What remains is natural authority. This is why presence feels real, because it is unforced. Reflection pause, subtraction practice. Invite the listener. Before speaking today, remove one thing: speed, volume, explanation. Notice what strengthens. Why stillness commands attention. Stillness creates contrast. In a moving world, stillness becomes signal. People look toward what does not scramble. Stillness tells the nervous system there is no emergency. That alone builds authority. The ethical use of presence. Presence influences regardless of intent. A calm speaker can stabilize a room. A tense one can destabilize it. This is why Conwell treated speech as a responsibility. Presence must be cultivated ethically. Presence as inner order made visible. When inner order exists, speech becomes expression, not effort. Words land because they are carried by structure. This is efficient speech. Maximum impact, minimum force. Transition to segment 3. In the next segment, we will explore why persuasion fails without regulation, how emotion leaks through language, the science of trust in speech, speaking to clarify, not dominate. Because when presence is real, words stop pushing. They arrive.
Oratory, presence, and the science of speaking. How the voice becomes authority. Why persuasion fails without regulation. Most attempts at persuasion fail not because the argument is weak, but because the speaker is dysregulated. A tense nervous system transmits urgency. Urgency triggers resistance. Listeners may agree outwardly, but internally they retreat. Regulation precedes persuasion. Emotion leaks through language. You cannot hide emotional state. It leaks through tone, pacing, word choice, and micropauses. Listeners feel what you are feeling, not what you claim to believe. This is why sincerity cannot be imitated. Reflection pause. Invite the listener. When I speak passionately, am I calm inside or trying to convince myself? The science of trust in speech. Trust is not logical, it is biological. People trust speakers who are consistent, are predictable, do not escalate unnecessarily. Consistency calms the nervous system. Calm opens attention. Attention allows influence. Why simplicity signals mastery. Complex speech often hides confusion. Simple speech signals integration. When an idea is fully digested, it becomes concise. Listeners trust what sounds settled. Authority speaks from completion, not struggle.
speaking to clarify, not dominate. Dominant speech seeks control. Clarity speech seeks order. Dominance creates opposition. Clarity creates alignment. Conwell believed the purpose of speech was to organize minds, not conquer them. Reflection pause. Intention reset. Ask quietly, before my next conversation, what am I trying to create? Agreement or understanding? The listener's nervous system as the true audience. You are not speaking to intellect alone. You are speaking to a nervous system. If the system feels threatened, logic shuts down, defenses rise. If it feels safe, curiosity opens, comprehension deepens. Efficient speech always considers the listener's state. Why emotional honesty strengthens authority. Pretended certainty weakens trust. Honest acknowledgement strengthens it. Saying, "I don't know yet," or "let me think," signals integrity. Integrity stabilizes presence. People trust those who are not performing certainty. The cost of manipulative speech. Manipulation works short-term, but it leaves residue, distrust, resentment, fragmentation. Conwell warned against persuasive power without moral grounding. Speech shapes relationships long after words end. Influence without force. The highest form of persuasion leaves choice intact. People feel respected, not cornered. This respect invites internal agreement. Agreement chosen lasts longer than agreement forced. Reflection pause. Lasting impact check. Invite the listener. After I speak, do people feel freer or pressured? Speech as an extension of character. Ultimately, speech cannot rise above character. Presence reveals inner order. Words amplify what already exists. That is why cultivating inner stability is the true training of oratory.
Oratory, presence, and the science of speaking. How the voice becomes authority. Oratory as ethical influence. Speech is never neutral. Every sentence either organizes attention or fragments it. Every tone either stabilizes or agitates. This is why Russell H. Conwell treated oratory as ethical power in increasing personal efficiency, not because words are dangerous, but because states are contagious. Speaking from alignment, not effort. When inner order exists, speech becomes simple. No strain, no performance, no urgency. Alignment means intention is clear, emotion is regulated, purpose is settled. Words then arrive with weight. They do not chase agreement, they invite it. Reflection pause, alignment check. Invite the listener. Before your next important conversation, ask, am I regulated? Is my intention clean? Can I tolerate silence? If not, pause. Authority begins there. Training presence as a daily practice. Presence is trained quietly. Daily practices that build it are slowing one conversation per day, allowing silence to finish a thought, breathing before responding, choosing clarity over cleverness. These seem small, they compound. Leaving clarity behind you. Efficient speech leaves a room clearer than it found it. After you speak, people should feel less confused, more oriented, calmer. If they feel energized but scattered, speech failed its ethical test. Clarity is the signature of mature oratory. Why authority never rushes. Rushing is a signal. It tells the listener, "This moment cannot hold me." Authority communicates the opposite. There is time. Time relaxes nervous systems. Relaxed systems listen. Reflection pause, after effect awareness. Ask quietly, when conversations end, what remains in the room? Tension or coherence? Presence in conflict. Conflict reveals presence. Under pressure, performance collapses, alignment remains. A regulated speaker lowers volume, slows pace, and clarifies intent. This disarms escalation. Presence becomes leadership. The long memory of speech. People forget arguments. They remember how they felt while listening. Speech writes emotional memory. This is why careless words echo and careful words endure. Oratory as inner order made audible. Speech is the audible form of structure. When structure exists, words land, meaning holds, influence stabilizes. This is efficiency in its highest form. Maximum clarity, minimum force. Practical integration, the speaking discipline. Invite the listener to practice for 1 week. Speak 10% slower. Allow 1 full silence per conversation. Remove 1 unnecessary explanation. Notice, attention increases, resistance decreases, trust deepens. Presence trains itself when space is allowed. Closing passage. Seal the insight. Before you try to persuade, regulate. Before you raise your voice, lower your pace. Before you seek authority, create order.